Kari Lake's apparent VP ambitions should make the GOP nervous. Many Republicans are concerned that the charismatic and polarizing Kari Lake will run for Arizona's Senate seat, thereby making it harder for the GOP to pick up a seat that could determine Senate control. Even more concerning for the party, that she might also be angling to become former President Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee. Lake has made her interest in running for the Senate clear by doing what any normal candidate would do. She regularly criticizes independent incumbent Senator Kyrsten Sinema and her Democratic challenger, Representative Ruben Gallego, on Twitter and in news releases. This month, she met with 6 GOP senators, including National Republican Senatorial Committee Chair Steve Daines, Montana, reportedly to discuss a potential bid. She also confirmed that she's thinking about running if her court case challenging last year's gubernatorial election outcome fails. It's been rejected thus far by every court that has heard it. Speculation that she's also interested in the vice presidency comes from the things she's done that most Senate candidates do not. She's maintained a heavy national speaking schedule, including 2 trips to Iowa and a lead speaking role at this year's Conservative Political Action Conference. She's recently touted an overseas trip to speak at CPAC Hungary and in Britain, saying she was expanding the movement to Europe. She will also release a book in June titled Unafraid, Just Getting Started, which tells her personal story and casts her as a champion for the America First movement. These are things that people who are seeking national office typically do. Republican voters and pundits are getting the hint. Polls in Iowa and New Hampshire show that Lake is easily the top VP choice among Republicans who back Trump. Axios also reported in March that she is one of 4 women Trump is considering for the slot. Lake herself neither confirms nor denies this speculation. In response to a request for comment for this column, she offered this statement: Senate, Vice President, President, or even dog catcher, none of it matters if our elections aren't honest. That's why my top priority is to restore faith in our elections. As I have written previously, Lake's claims of election fraud are demonstrably wrong. She has time to consider her options. Arizona's Senate primary isn't until early August and she doesn't have to officially file until March. Normally, candidates for targeted races have to get started months before filing so they have time to raise money. But Lake's high visibility could make that a less pressing need. A February poll found she had 88% name identification with Arizona voters, and her court case challenging the 2022 results has kept her name in the news. National officials would surely prefer an early announcement, but Lake can probably wait until the end of the year or even until 2024 to make a final decision. The complications, both for her and the GOP, come from what happens if she runs for the Senate without rejecting the possibility that she might accept a chance to run for vice president. Winning a competitive U.S. Senate seat requires complete dedication. Candidates not only must campaign relentlessly, they must also raise tens of millions of dollars. She simply can't get that amount of cash when she's not putting in the effort, and a lingering shot at the vice presidency might prove distracting. The problems intensify the longer she stays in the Senate race. Once she files, she will probably be the overwhelming favorite for the nomination. Most votes are cast by mail even in Arizona Republican primaries, and those ballots for the August primary can be received as early as July 10. That's uncomfortably close to the GOP convention's July 15 start date. Trump didn't pick Mike Pence as his 2016 running mate until the Friday before the convention. It's possible that the nominee will either not be known or will not have made a public vice presidential selection by the time Arizonans start to vote. There's also another concern. Arizona law allows someone to be on the ballot for vice president and for another federal office simultaneously, but the demands of running for vice president would surely mean she could not seriously campaign for the Senate. Doing so would result in the GOP having a nominee for a highly contested seat who isn't raising money and isn't actively campaigning in state. That's not good for the party and would probably haunt Lake in the fall campaign. Lake's rapid rise gives her lots of choices. Given the opportunity to run for both Senate and Vice President, Republicans and her fans should hope she chooses just one, for her benefit and theirs. Kari Lake's apparent VP ambitions should make the GOP nervous. Many Republicans are concerned that the charismatic, and polarizing, Kari Lake will run for Arizona's Senate seat, thereby making it harder for the GOP to pick up a seat that could determine Senate control. Even more concerning for the party, that she might also be angling to become former President Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee. Lake has made her interest. Kevin McCarthy, wasteful government doesn't have to keep growing. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is an important first step in relieving America of its crushing debt. In Washington, wasteful government spending almost always goes up. When a business or an individual spends more than it makes, it goes bankrupt, Ronald Reagan observed. When government does it, it sends you the bill. As a result, the growth of government and wasteful spending often seem inevitable. But House Republicans' Fiscal Responsibility Act proves they aren't. Last year Republicans made a common-sense commitment to America: entrust us with the majority and we will stop the out-of-control inflationary spending that is harming our country. The American people know that Democrats' spending addiction has caused significant problems, including the inflation that has broken family budgets. Rapid interest rate hikes in response to inflationary spending caused 3 of the largest bank failures in history in the past several months. All of this has made America more dependent on foreign debt holders. The total debt we now owe to other countries is $7.4 trillion. Countries like China are buying more of our farmland, more of our businesses and more of our debt. Everyone knows this is unsustainable and irresponsible. But to change course, we need to change how Washington operates. That is what House Republicans have fought for since January 12, when I called on President Biden to negotiate a responsible debt limit increase. For 97 days, Mr. Biden dragged his feet and instead promoted a far-left wish list that included more reckless spending, more taxes, and more debt. Apparently he thought he could ignore the national debt crisis like he ignores the crisis at the southern border. House Republicans never gave up. While the president ducked negotiations and Senate Democrats were missing in action, Republicans passed a bill that forced Mr. Biden to the table and changed the paradigm. With the introduction of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we are changing the direction in Washington through a responsible debt limit increase that cuts spending, saves taxpayers money and restores economic growth. Perhaps the most historic and foundational change is cutting spending year over year for the first time in more than a decade. Taking aside veterans' health care, which will be fully funded, we will return to 2022 spending levels for non-defense accounts and set top-line spending at 1% growth for the next 6 years. In other words, we will spend less money next year than we did this year, stopping inflationary spending while fully funding national defense, meeting our obligations to veterans, and preserving and protecting Social Security and Medicare. No other debt limit increase in the past decade